Hey everybody, welcome to Dreamloop DevCast. It is Golden Week in Japan right now, and for that reason we are talking about Japanese video games. And Japanese video games are basically the foundation of many of us as gamers because of Super Mario and Zelda and so many others.
Final Fantasy and all that shit. Also, I'm here and Tom is
Yeah.
here also.
Hey,
You guys are there, but who cares?
truly.
Yeah. And of course, we've talked about Metal Gear a lot of times before, but
Have we?
it's- yeah, it's one of my personal favorite games
Mine
series
too.
of all time, and yeah, obviously from Japan, and you can see that game in many ways, but we found this list of Japanese games, and there's a lot of very very quirky titles in here. One name that really jumped out at me was Aggressors of Dark Combat.
Okay.
Oh, you're looking
That's
at the alphabetical list of.
Yeah, this is a pretty epic title. It looks like a fighting game, but yeah, it's Aggressors of Dark Combat, and also combat with a K.
Yeah, because Mortal Kombat also did with a K, so of course it has to be.
Yeah.
I guess they sort of thought that that's the way it's written.
That's the way it's spelled. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's racist,
Yeah.
kinda. Yeah,
Yeah,
But
this
yeah, I mean,
looks
we-
like a very generic fighting game.
but yeah, like
Yeah.
we kind of talk about Japanese games a lot on the DevCast anyway, because of course we always talk about Dark Souls because we
There
have
we go.
to. We're contractually
Everyone
obligated.
drinks.
And then as you mentioned, we talk about Metal Gear also, stuff like, because I mean Japan is very influential, like as a nation, as a culture. We were actually talking before the show about how it's interesting that they kind of, in a way, they started a lot of stuff. The NES started a lot of stuff, and like there was the whole rise and fall of video games before that with Space Invaders and Pong and shit, and then E.T. of course, and all that stuff. But like NES, I guess, was kind of like the gaming is a thing now moment, as far as I understand. Once again, take this all with a grain of salt because I'm not gonna check anything because I'm lazy. but this is how I remember it going. And then. And Japan was very prominent for a long time, and then there was sort of, from my point of view, this kind of like, I wouldn't necessarily say slump, but there was a point where like Blizzard, Valve was very prominent, and Blizzard became very prominent, because it used to be, at least to me as a kid, like there's Capcom and there's Konami and there's Nintendo and like Sega and like basically every single company that was like I knew the name of was Japanese. And they made all the cool shit. And then like everybody, like these days people talk about Euro jank, but before that you could almost say like non-Japanese jank. Like that's almost how it felt like to me as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, and then you started, I mean there were good games too, but then you started getting stuff like, or it almost got reversed like everybody was talking about, like, well I said like Valve, Blizzard, stuff like that. But now recently they are kind of maybe a little bit, if not necessarily falling out of favor, but gaming is becoming a little bit fragmented where like they are now more concerned with mass appeal and like pushing, for the widest audience and stuff like that. And then Japan is a little bit like coming back as the place where they innovate in a way, and where they make like, they push gaming as a thing forwards maybe,
Yeah.
you could
Yeah.
argue. And you're also seeing like the influence of Japan on a lot of stuff like,
And
yeah.
nobody makes games that crazy as the Japanese. For example, like Katamari Damacy.
yeah,
Like that's like the psychedelic feel good game. Like
yeah,
it's
that's true.
super like just balls out crazy and imaginative. And also I think I haven't played the games, but as far as I understand, they're like pretty playable games, and they're fun to play.
Yeah, and it's like they just take some completely crazy concept. And I mean, I guess Katamari Damacy is a good example because I guess it's been cloned a little bit, but it's like, it's so far out there that I don't even know of any too prominent clones of it. I'm sure there are ones, but often like if you create some like almost its own genre, then you know it explodes and everybody's making it. But Japanese games sometimes just do something so crazy that it just like, you know, but it doesn't become a genre because they did it so well already as the first installment, and it's so crazy that nobody knows what to do with it. It's like,
Yeah.
So, like, do you guys have any like particular favorite games that you know are from Japan? Like Tommy already answered, I guess. What,
so basically, this is just by you guys. You mean me?
You guys.
Yeah. All my personalities will now take turns to answer this. No, but I mean, I have to mention Final Fantasy because it was kind of like up until before I played, because I remember when I was quite young, my friends had like Final Fantasy 7 on the PS1, and I think even before that I had played like some JRPGs on an emulator, Super Nintendo JRPGs, but I had no fucking idea what I was doing, and I think the ones that stuck to me then was like Lufia 2 was one that I played a lot of. For some reason, like I guess I just didn't play Final Fantasy because the name was like, it was a long name, and it sounded weird, and there were like a lot of numbers, like Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, and I was like, I don't want to play these. So I faintly remember thinking this. But then I played Lufia 1, which is a like sequel to Lufia 2, chronologically, stuff like that. But whatever, anyway. So my friends had Final Fantasy 7, we played that, but we didn't understand English. And then, you know, they would play it by themselves, and then sometimes we would be there when they were playing, so we had no fucking idea what was going on. And we were just like getting stuck and like over-leveling ridiculously because we didn't know what to do and stuff like that. But then my cousin got Final Fantasy 8 for the PlayStation 1. And we kind of went through that together with my brother and my cousin and stuff like that. And like, that was really like almost a game changer. Because I had played like a bunch of role-playing games before that, stuff like that. But it was much more cinematic than what I was used to, and I had never been like exposed to this like anime type of storytelling before that, I don't think. So it was very like, oh, you can do this, like this is interesting, and like the scale of it and all the cutscenes and everything. It was quite.
Final Fantasy VII was for me also, I think, the first exposure to anime really, and you know, or at least I mean the anime in the sense that it's it's an anime derivative, want it or not, and. I distinctly remember when I was in elementary school, and I was talking to my friends very enthusiastically about the game, and I remember how they made fun of me for liking that game because it had something called turn-based combat. They were like, so that's ridiculous. Like, what are they just standing there like this? Hey, you hit me now, and then I'll hit you. And like, what is that? That's bullshit. And you know. Well, it didn't last very long because, like, when they also got to play it, I think most of them really liked it. And I remember really sitting many long hours with some of my friends playing those games. Like, definitely formed a basis of my gaming youth.
For me, probably the first Japanese games that I've played, even I didn't know they were Japanese back then because I was young and dumb, were probably some of the older Mario games, and then Donkey Kong Country, and then Final Fantasy 9, I think. I didn't play 7 that much when I was younger, only at an older age did I pick it up and play it more. But 9 was something that I really fell in love back in the day, and I still think it's the best Final Fantasy
and I agree,
ever played or watched.
But actually, that raises a really good point because you mentioned Mario, and of course, like I mean, I played Mario. So everybody's played Mario, but it almost doesn't even like it's weird, you know. Matthias asked me. I mean, I should have said Mario too, but I said Final Fantasy because that's more distinctly Japanese. Mario is just like concept defining. It's not even genre defining. It's defined, you know, with the concept of video gaming.
It's the mascot of gaming.
Yeah, pretty much. And there's other stuff like Mega Man, stuff like that, like games where they did such fundamental things that you don't even understand that they did them necessarily. like in regards
they had to
inputs
come up with so many new concepts for like they had to consider everything, like from how the screen scrolls, not only from a technical standpoint, but also like in the concept of you as a player playing the game and the screen scrolling to the side. Like that wasn't a given back then. They had to invent and they had to facilitate that somehow and everything.
Yeah. And I guess talking more about Japan and Japanese stuff, I never really got interested in anime, and I, as a younger fellow, thought it was really weird, and the people who watched it were really weird as well. But now, at an older age, I do realize how actually cool medium it actually is, and how it allows you to make stuff that doesn't really work in, for example, live action. And when I first played Metal Gear, or I guess it was Metal Gear Solid or 2, I can't remember actually. I guess it might have been Metal Gear Solid 2, because that was a bit more cinematic than the first one. That I really thought, yeah, this is freaking cool. Like, wow, why don't we see this in like other mediums, like all these really crazy characters and cool like moves. There's a fucking cyborg ninja here. And now at a later date, I realized, yeah, it was there always, and I just sort of looked past it.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing too. It's kind of like the window dressing around things. Like how is it framed? Because I said, like anime is one good example where, because there's a lot of garbage. But there's also a lot of really cool stuff that I also used to think that it's weird. Like my exposure to anime was basically like seeing Spanish dubbed Dragon Ball Z when I was abroad with my parents, where they were just yelling. Yeah. I remember like they were yelling, and then like they were just being tossed around, and like somebody was like hanging by their feet from somewhere because they got thrown away by an explosion, and they were just talking in Spanish. I had no fucking idea what was going on. And even then I remember thinking, this is fucking weird, but I also remember thinking, this is kind of cool, because it's cartoons, but they're like doing adult stuff. I mean, adult stuff in the sense that it's aimed at an older audience, not necessarily... I mean, we I guess we're going to get to that too, because we're talking about Japan and video games, but anyway... But like, and I remember thinking, why, like Tommy said, like, why isn't this done more? Because especially back then, there wasn't really CGI that much. Like, you couldn't really do all that crazy stuff like in live action, but they could do. And then of course, like Pokemon became a thing, but that was always like the Pokemon anime was like always kind of lame. Like,
and actually, no one really talked about that as an anime.
Yeah, that's the other thing, because that's why it
was just Pokemon.
It managed to sneak past people's radars because it was not branded as anime, but it is very anime. And like I remember thinking as a kid, like it was quite fun for a bit, like we were really into it, but then it had the problem, just went on forever. Yeah. And like there was no payoff to anything. It was just filler and fucking nothing happening.
It's just like showing off like new Pokemon each episode, so that you go and buy the fucking cards and the games and everything.
It was, but even with that one, it's like there's some really weird stuff there. Like for example, I mean fucking Brock as a character in general, and all the like how he's a massive pervert basically, and all the nosebleed stuff and stuff like that, and like. And especially because they tried to kind of like change it, but it was still obviously there. And there were like undertones where even as a kid I was like, this is kind of weird. Like they don't do this in children's cartoons, but apparently in Japan
do you remember, were you paying attention at the time when, I think it was like Pokemon was already being shown in Finland, but anime and manga weren't really such a big thing. But there was some controversy. Some Finnish officials I think some of them like actually tried to like lobby. For the fact that
like
this
Dragon
is really
Ball, like not Dragon Ball Z, but the Dragon Ball manga,
Dragon Ball.
Because it had like these kind of like not suitable for children elements, like Master Roshi wanted
and
to see Bulma's panties or something and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
Ranma as well.
Oh, and Ranma too,
also,
because Ranma is really weird too. Like even now, it's a little bit as a concept. It's like depending on how you frame it, because it's a dude who turns into a girl, who turns into a dude, and then hijinks ensue. Like even now, depending on how you frame it, it could be offensive.
But it was so difficult. It was so difficult for us to to try to kind of justify it and explain that. Well, I mean, I know it looks kind of weird and it's not
Mom,
really
I
normal,
know how
but
this looks, but
but really, I mean, this is
I watched it for the
this is
plot.
awesome stuff. Yeah. I mean, this is awesome, and by that time we had played some Japanese games, and we kind of knew that it was Japan being Japan in every sense of the word. So
and for the longest time too, like I think in a way that sort of weirdness, some aspects of that weirdness held them down. Like only very recently, for example, anime has become like culturally I would almost say that it became culturally acceptable roughly at the same rate as like video games became like a mass audience thing. And now you started getting stuff like that is very distinctly Western, that is still made in Japan or whatever. Like take One Punch Man, for example, which is basically a parody of like very much of the Western way of doing superheroes. It's also a deconstruction of anime genre stuff like that. But for example, that's one where it doesn't have that like I saw a girl's panties, so my nose is bleeding now aspect, which is very jarring to some people. Like they're kind of a little bit like toning that down. And and I'm sure like if you're really big into anime, you could point me towards shit where that wasn't a thing. I mean it wasn't a thing initially when Ghibli, Studio Ghibli started doing stuff like that, and then Miyazaki famously said that anime was a mistake.
Yeah, I think his idea of making anime is like totally from a different universe.
Yeah, because he
than
saw
what anime really is.
Disney stuff, and he was like, "I'll make that, but better, basically."
It's like he's not really even making anime.
No.
What he's doing is not anime.
Yeah, but he kind of started it.
Yeah,
and then, and then now, of course, Western, companies have started copying that side of, so it's like bouncing back and forth.
It's a little bit like in the world of music that everybody says that Meshuggah started the gent genre, but they're not really playing gent.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it tends to be though. Like when you create a genre, you don't set out to create a genre. Usually, you just set out to do cool shit, and then it becomes so cool that people are like, fuck, we're gonna copy that, and then it's a genre. And then you can say that no, like all gent is trash or all anime is trash or whatever,
Personally, I think for me, I tend not to like the sort of anime that has these very like sort of out of nowhere people acting crazy and like the tonal changes that some anime have. Like,
but that's distinctly Japanese thing. Like it's not even necessarily just in anime. We actually discussed this a bunch, for example, with Yurai, where in Asian like storytelling, they like do a lot of tonal shifts, and they don't like, because the things they do tend to be, the symbols they use are on a different level, so to speak. Like some things are very formulaic. Like for example, anime is a good example. Like you have the sweat drop going down the temple thing, for example, or nosebleeds or whatever. Like kind of nonsensical things that convey a meaning, but then they don't have like necessarily tonal structures that are at least familiar to us. Like it can be like a slapstick joke about panties, and then somebody dies, and then they just go back to the joke or whatever, all other way around.
I mean, I haven't watched this series, but I've heard that Gintama is one of those series where there's a lot of like sudden and very heavy like tonal shifts where, like you said, it's some things are really almost like morbid, and then some really absurd humor starts coming out of everywhere and stuff like that.
And the other thing that I don't usually or actually ever like to watch in anime is all this like stuff that revolves around these almost, let's say, almost they're almost hentai, I guess. Like that's the whole purpose of the
Like
anime.
the
Is like
fan service.
yeah, the fan service stuff. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, ecchi.
Yeah, or
Ecchi
ecchi.
kind
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, but that's the thing though, because ecchi is its own genre, even I would say. Like it because it takes it a little bit further too. But yeah, like that's what I mean, is that it has some aspects that are very jarring to us culturally.
Yeah.
That might not be jarring to them, even though from what I understand, mangas and anime are like very much a nerd thing in Japan too, I guess. But somehow they're still. I mean, once again, like grain of salt. Take it.
Yes.
Like, take a really big grain of salt, because fuck if I know anything about anything I'm talking about. But I've understood that it's not like, even though it's a big industry, it's not like old people are just like if my grandpa was Japanese, would just be reading like, I don't know, like Panty Adventures 69.
The only anime I've managed to watch that is that has a lot of that fan service elements is probably Food Wars.
Yeah, that's a great anime.
But I mean, like, it can be all right if it's not overdone. And like, because we do it in the West too, and it's just done differently. And like
It seemed to
yeah.
like to us, it kind of seems for some reason that it's not so overdone, and it's not so
because
over
here
the top.
it's kind of like baked into things, so to speak. Like if you have a sexy character, they are just kind of like, they're just there, and all their behavior and everything is like, they don't have a moment where they are now like used as a symbol for whatever, like, oh, this is, I'm not gonna get a nosebleed, whatever, like they don't have that. They're just sort of there.
Yeah. Like for example, it comes to my mind about Dragon Age, and like Morrigan in Dragon Age she's supposed to be like this very sultry character, but I don't know, for some it seems a little forced somehow. It doesn't have a lot of power to in that regard. Something's kind of still missing. It feels like they tried to insert some sexy aspect to her, but they somehow kind of chickened out in making it. I don't know if Witcher does it any better or something.
I think usually if you think about this as the like divide between the Western way and the Asian way of doing things, which is probably very bad way of doing things, is that in the Asian way, or let's say Japanese way, the sort of the main character or the other characters acknowledge the sort of sexiness or whatever of the character, and in Western world it's just there for the viewer's sake.
Yeah, and then I think it's also that it's compartmentalized in anime when it's done there typical. Like, it's kind of like, this is the sexy scene now. Like huge sexy scene, and then like it's like broadcasted very clearly. There's very clear symbology that now this character is being sexy. Like now like it's But whereas like in the Western way of doing it would be just, this character is here and they're just generally here because we wanted to have a lady here.
Yeah. They are sexy all around, no matter where or when they are shown.
Because you can have like, in an anime you can have like a really serious character that just like has importance to the plot, stuff like that. But then they can just have, every now and then they can have fan service moments, just to have them there. Like they might, sometimes it feels like they're like, well, we need to have that stuff, so we either introduce a character or we just have this character do it occasionally. Mm-hmm. And it can, like I guess that's the tonal shift thing again, like, like just shifting to the sexy tone. Mm.
This is actually interesting. Now, if Matthias, if you think about, for example, Metal Gear Solid 3 with Eva.
Yeah, I just thought about it.
She is sort of walking the thin line between these two, because
but that's the thing, because Kojima is so influenced by Western culture. Exactly. So I guess I'm also gonna mention Metal Gear Solid because that's very interesting, because it really like straddles that line between both ways of doing it. And then Kojima likes to do the trolley thing of like who's the fucking half naked sniper lady in 5.
Quiet.
Yeah. Where Kojima's like, when you hear the explanation for why she's like, your minds are gonna be blown, and it was something stupid like she breathes through her skin or something.
And actually,
like that.
I think the words were, "You will be ashamed of
that
calling me
was,
out."
Yeah, but I think he's just trolling.
Yeah, probably.
But Metal Gear Solid is a good example where it kind of does both, and you can do both. And I mean, these are gross generalizations. It goes both ways.
Yeah.
But in general, I guess like anime does a lot of stuff that we associate with like soap operas or like crappy TV, but for them it's kind of like more prestigious in a way. Like it's weird. I mean, and I'm by no means like fucking expert in anime or anything. Like I think the only anime I've watched in its entirety is Azumanga Daioh, which is quite an interesting one to have us to be the only one. But yeah. So I'm no expert, but it's weird.
Yeah.
I kind of lost my train of thought, but I guess it's mostly centered around the fact that, yeah, shit's weird. Also, I like the fact that we were supposed to talk about Japanese video games, and now we've been like, welcome to Dreamloop Weebcast.
Well, we did mention Metal Gear Solid again.
No, yeah, that's true. Yeah, we kind of reined it back in.
So, Matthias, are there any fan service moments in Dark Souls?
Yeah.
Actually, I just figured out one myself. The big goddess woman in the first Dark Souls.
That's pretty much the one. At least in Dark Souls 1, there aren't any others, as far as I can remember.
But there's also characters that are tonally similar to fansers, like that are kind of like unexpectedly silly at times or stuff, like which I kind of associate. Like that's also a type of fan service, I think.
Yeah, and in Dark Souls, there's always. It seems like there's always this kind of mellow and this welcoming female character in a Souls game. Like she's always the one who lets you level up when you bring souls to her, and
mother.
I just kind of. yeah. I guess that's some kind of weird fan service, but yeah, it always has this kind of really comforting tone to it when you go to her, and
I think that's intentional very much.
Yeah, I mean it's not a bad thing at all. It's actually it's a nice element into the pacing of the game, like emotionally as well. So it's good. I'm scrolling through the list of games, and I made it all the way to the letter P. And there's been so many games that I kind of almost had something to say about, but I didn't want to interrupt you guys. But like, there's so many games I didn't even always realize that a particular game was from Japan. Like in the beginning, we were talking about Space Invaders. Like if you had asked me, I would have actually guessed that it's an American game, but no, it's not.
Nope, sorry. Where's the BattleTech from? Is it from Western?
BattleTech, I'm pretty sure it's Western. Yeah.
Okay, because I was thinking did Japanese games and where did mechs come from in general?
No.
Is Gundam?
No, but I think BattleTech might have been before, but don't quote me on this. Let's actually check the almighty Wikipedias, who are never wrong. And
because that's one thing that comes to mind when people mention Japanese games, is mechas, and that's in robots and especially big robots in general.
BattleTech was first launched in 1984. So it's quite old. And then Transformers is also super old.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't know how old all the Kamen Rider and that stuff like that is, because that kind of has similar elements. And then you have all the Godzilla stuff and stuff like that, which is also really... So I would actually need to do actual research, which of course I won't do, because that means that...
Screw that.
Yeah, screw... I mean, because Godzilla is first appearance is 1954 according to Wikipedia. But of course, no, he's not really mechanical or anything. But it's kind of like the whole like it's a big thing that smashes shit But I guess mech stuff is like because there's two angles to it. There's the kind of like Gundam-y, they're in space and they are. Back in the day, they were much more like humanoid.
Yeah.
And then there's the mech warrior, kind of like they are war machines and they kind of are supposed to make sense. And then I guess they are kind of like being merged a little bit. And you have ones where the mechs a little bit look like fighter planes when they're flying ones. Like their body shapes are quite weird.
It's like they was it Front Mission or Armored Core?
Armored Core is quite like between Japanese and like mech warrior designs. Actually, Armored Core that's an interesting one because I remember that it's that's the thing because it's from software. Yeah. I'm always surprised by that.
Yeah, you don't really remember it.
Yeah. Surprisingly, they have done something other than Souls games.
Yeah. No, because I remember playing Armored Core like maybe 3 or 4? Question mark. Let's see. No, cannot have been 4. 3. Maybe 3.
United States president stuff. Or
no, that's Metal Wolf Chaos, isn't it?
Oh yeah, true.
Oh, that's the best game ever.
Yeah, best game.
That was the silly one.
Yeah, but Metal Gear Armored Core 3 I played when my cousin, he had it on the PlayStation 2, and I remember us being like I remember the game starts like kind of like with a tutorial, and they have these like kind of Metal Gear like serious voices, and like the music was very like this weird like, especially at the time, I was like, what the fuck is this? It sampled like this almost like vocoder mechanical voices, and it was quite like weird. And then this Japanese type of like, the Japanese music that sounds weird but kind of fits type of stuff. Hard to explain. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. But like back then I was thinking this is very weird. We used to describe it, and music was like na 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 na, like it makes no sense. And then remember this one line where there's some dude just like, if you fail, you die. And then you just fly around and like mechs shoot at you, and then you just explode and it's game over. because the controls were quite different from what we were used to, stuff like that. But we played a lot of it, and in the end we got really into it, how you could like customize your mech and stuff like that. It was quite cool.
Have you played the Zone of the Enders series?
I haven't actually.
No, but I would want to.
That's
I'm a bit sad that they only remastered the second one.
Isn't
That's
that
weird?
Do I remember wrong, or is that Kojima stuff?
Yeah. It's Kojima produced, I think.
Yeah.
The first one was Kojima directed as well, I think. Maybe.
Yeah, it should be pretty interesting. Isn't the remaster coming to PC as well?
Yes. Which is even more sad that they don't have the first one there as well.
Yeah.
Should probably check it out. I've heard a lot of good things.
Yeah. And aren't those mechs, the shape of them, aren't they like kind of streamlined and maybe, I don't know if they're like airplane-like?
Yeah, they are a little bit like airplane-like. They are, because first they were just humanoids in space for some reason. I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure, let's check how old Transformers is, because I think Transformers is really old. Well, no, it's not actually. It's around the same time as BattleTech. It's 1984. So who the fuck knows? Because I'm pretty sure that everybody was probably was partially inspired by, for example, some of the Cosmic Marvel characters that are really old. I think like Galactus, stuff like that, and the Celestials, when they have like basically robot dudes in space that are very colorful, stuff like that, and then kind of like, but it doesn't make any sense when they move in animation. Like they make sense. Like Galactus, for example, is a good character to have in a comic book because it's just like a dude standing in space with a fucking silly bishop hat. But it works when it's a still image and he can like loom over a planet or something. But when they have to move and fight and stuff like that, then you kind of want them to be more streamlined. But the first they were more humanoid, and then you kind of get the the second generation where they started designing these space mechs to somehow at least a little bit make sense.
Yeah, it's really clear if you look at the mechs from I lost it. What was the name of the game? Right.
What?
Right. So if you look at Metal Gear Solid 2's Metal Gear Ray,
Yeah.
and then compare it to the mechs in Zone of the Enders,
Yeah.
they have lots of similarities.
Yeah, they have the kind of like
design-wise.
where the cockpit is kind of like a fighting plane type of a thing, and
Yeah, and if you look at the like shapes that are used and the like all the way down to how like there's these weird sort of dots everywhere.
and they are more
also
like
present there.
more like animal-like than human. Yeah.
And I guess I wonder if actually now that I have it here, I wonder if Yoji Shinkawa's that's like his signature stuff there. He's the artist, concept artist that's been doing all the Metal Gears.
I still can't decide which one is cooler, Metal Gear Rex or Ray.
I like Rex more.
You like Rex more, right? I used to do, but then I started looking at Ray with a new eye, and
Well, I
That
guess
sounded really
grew
perverted.
specifically to look at Metal Gears.
yes,
and now that I've sort of gotten over the disappointment of Metal Gear 5, this Sahelanthropus actually is pretty cool as well, because it's kind of like the combination of both of them.
yeah.
Metal Gears are cool because they are like really, like they are like dragons or whatever. Like they are, you know, they're monsters. They're very inhuman in a sense. Like
Yeah, I mean they got them roar for
yeah, exactly.
no
They're
apparent
more
reason.
yeah.
What was that thing in Metal Gear Solid 4 where the some of the Metal Gears in that game they do this howling sound, and it's supposed to be like, don't they like explain it in the game that it's somehow scary to the soldiers in the battlefield?
Oh, you mean the geckos?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, they scream and urinate
right.
because Kojima likes to put some piss and poop humor there.
And again, like
Kojima.
the Japan thing, like it again like harkens back to the whole fan service and stuff like that, where they just sometimes there's these elements that are to some people very jarring, but I think that's the charm, because it keeps you on the edge of your seat in a way.
Yeah.
Like nothing is you know, you can't rule anything out. Like basically anything can happen. I think that's the cool part. There isn't like some easy to figure out internal logic to the world where once you know that, you know how fucking everything works, and then basically surprises come from the author basically going like, fuck you, you know, I'm inventing new shit. That's done too, of course, but I like it when the rules are like just that there aren't rules.
Yeah.
Because if you compare like, I don't know, basically almost any anime, for example, and you compare it to say like Harry Potter, for example, and how like the internal logic of Harry Potter works, and how, because it's similar, it's ambiguous, but there's still like implied to be underlying logic, like magic, and it's really funny too, because Harry Potter is like it's quirky and it's kind of crazy, but there's still like very very much like you can kind of like, oh, you know, you can go like, I didn't expect that, but in a way you kind of did. Like it's not as crazy as like a mechanical robot that howls and pisses itself or whatever. Like you wouldn't have a character pissing themselves to want to do like so flippantly or whatever in a Harry Potter book, for example.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where the fuck I'm going with this. but
Well,
sure it's going places.
you just want a Harry Potter character to piss themselves.
Yes.
In or
Can't a man dream?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Give me this one thing.
we will grant you that. Hey, here comes a collective lore check. Do you know if the genre, I guess it's called a rail shooter, like Virtua Cop and House of the Dead and all these games, if that genre is originally Japanese?
I would think so, because of the arcade culture there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is
I
true.
would think so. Yeah.
I would,
Yeah.
I would
sure
actually
about-
more call them like maybe light gun games.
Yeah, light gun games. Yeah. Have you played Virtua Cop games?
I played one of them at a friend's place on a PC with keyboard and mouse, and it was horrible
We used
for
to play
apparent
those
reasons.
with my friends when back in the day when we used to go watch all the movies in Helsinki because we want to see them on a bigger screen, and maybe earlier than that, they would arrive into our hometown, and they had like in Tennispalatsi, they had a lot of arcade machines, like kind of like just there, and they had like I think was it called like Time Crisis or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
Time
what's
Crisis.
Yeah, we played that a bunch, for example, and stuff like that. I remember really enjoying them. Like I didn't mind putting money into them because it was such a different experience. Maybe I wouldn't even mind putting money into them today if they were done with modern tech. Because there's something about like the whole like it's a cabinet and it's there, but you hold an actual gun and like.
Yeah, and I mean, I personally had one of the most like longest. I don't know how to say this in English. Like the longest sticking memories of video gaming I've ever had with what?
Like furthest memories, like
Oldest.
oldest.
No, not really oldest, but you know, a memory that I will remember it always. Basically.
Okay.
With Time Crisis too. We were on. I guess we were on a ship, cruising ship or something, and there was that game. The game cabinet was there, and I tried it. And the light gun in that version was like mechanical. When you pull the trigger, there would be a slider that kind of blows back and goes back into place. And it, you know, you kind of feel it in your hand when you do it. And that was like that alone was really amazing. But then after playing a while, I got further in the game, and I picked up a machine gun upgrade, and you would hold the trigger. And the gun would just go.
Yeah.
And that was like fucking awesome. I was like, "What is this real?"
It's really fucking badass.
Super cool.
Yeah. I remember that too.
Yeah, I remember another light gun game that had this like a sniper rifle controller, where there was a big screen in front and then another screen in the scope, so that you would actually get the zoom to look from the scope, and you had to snipe with that. That was really, really cool. It was at our local amusement park.
So it's kind of like
Nice.
AR or VR before that current craze. But I mean, they were things before too. So yeah.
Yeah, and you know, Virtua Cops were also games that I played a lot, especially Virtua Cop 2. I had the PC version pirated when I was a kid.
Oh God!
Now everybody on the internet knows.
Yes.
You're
Really ashamed.
And I had these game pads, and I would play with my friend. And you know, we would just basically go through the game multiple times and just have fun shooting bad guys. And I remember one point when we were like, because the controllers had these turbo functions, and I remember my friend asking like, "Hey, this turbo machine gun shooting is getting a little boring. Should we like become snipers now?" And like, I just looked at him like, no. Just kept holding the button. It was good times. But I really, really remember the graphical style in those games. Like really simplistic, you know, probably state of the art maybe at the time, but really kind of aesthetic 3D models.
Yeah, this like very PlayStation-y look that they had.
Yes.
Yeah. And
But I remember
you know,
they had good animation.
Yeah. They also ran really well. It was like so nice just playing because the frame rate was so good and the animations were quite like quite elaborate.
That's actually an interesting point, really, because I remember that too. I think like maybe on those, like because it was so much supposed to be a spectacle, that they were in a way very much ahead of their time, because then there was a long stretch of time where games might push graphics or they might push like whatever gimmick features or something, but like they didn't really put that much effort. I mean, even this day you could argue that certain companies Bethesda don't put any effort into their animations, for example.
Bethesda mentioned everyone drink up.
Right.
Yeah, but like, because it is true, like, and they felt more whole, so to speak, like, you know, where every single aspect of them, because like a rail shooter, for example, like, well, you are on rails, so I guess then they put much more effort into the presentation in areas that were then maybe neglected, and maybe to this day on some games are neglected because of the trend of not being on rails. So I mean, if you're not on rails, you can't really have like cinematic sequences as easily. Or what ends up happening is then you'll get Bioshock Infinite, where it ends up costing so much that you just basically go bankrupt or whatever. Because actually, another thing about it, Bioshock Infinite is very rail shootery at times, where like there's some really dramatic set piece thing, you know, like, going on.
Literally.
Yeah, funny
that's true. I missed the perfect opportunity. Yeah, it's literally a rail shooter. That's true.
Yeah, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, like you know, something really dramatic happens, but they did it in a cool way where you don't have to look at it. But like it's very scripted.
It's really cool that you don't see all the cool stuff.
No, but like because you see people reacting to something, and you know, and then you turn and you see it. It's quite cool. But obviously, really expensive to do, I guess.
Yeah. Other Japanese.
Any other weird, crazy directions we could take?
During all this talk, I actually checked, and I was surprised that From Software actually had also done some Tenchu games.
Oh, that's right.
Like PSP and PS2 Tenchu games.
But wasn't that reason why when they released that teaser that people are thinking it's gonna be a new Tenchu?
I
had no idea. I thought they were just all like, yeah, it's Bloodborne 2.
I looked at it and I was like almost sure it was Tenchu 2. Tenchu, what is it, 3 or 4, something like that?
I have no idea.
But
Tenchu reboot, probably.
Yeah. But some evidence suggests that it's not going to be, it can't be Tenchu for this and that reason, but we'll see.
Okay.
I think Sega owns Tenchu, the Tenchu license.
Sega does what Nintendo don't.
Blast processing.
Blast processing, yeah.
Goddamn console wars.
Sega is actually an interesting thing to mention too, because, like, I mean, well, it sounds weird to say this, but Sega is the only console company to kind of have such a clear rise and fall in the sort of modern era. It's also Japanese, so I guess that's the thing. That's kind of like a Japanese thing that we can talk about, and the fact that they're still relevant in a way. Sega is really weird. Like, for example, all the stuff that they do with Sonic, and you know, the Sonic Twitter account, for example, that everybody knows, where they just post weird memes and stuff like that. Like,
Sonic parties.
Because the thing is, like, Sega, in a way, for a bit at least, felt like they were getting ahead of the curve from other Japanese companies, because there was, as we discussed in the very beginning of this, that my personal weirdest theory that I pulled out of my ass in the spot, that Japanese games, like, you know, they were culturally, they had a moment where Western games kind of, like, Western developers kind of like surpassed them. And during that time there, you know, what happened, I feel, was that, you know, they get old. Like, because in there the culture is that, you know, the bosses are the oldest people in the company, and, you know, you don't really retire until you're, like, literally a mummy or whatever. I guess that's racist. Sorry if you're Japanese or a mummy. But yeah, like, and then Sega, I remember, like, they got, like, younger CEO or something. And you could kind of see that everywhere, how they started, like, being ironic about stuff and kind of like... But now I guess a lot of other companies are doing that too. Nintendo got a new CEO, right? Just now, yeah.
Never mind, From Software does own the IP.
Oh.
Or the rights.
Okay.
They actually, the latest Tenchu game that came out on Wii and PSP, and it was made in collaboration with Ubisoft. Which is really weird.
So we're gonna get a Ubisoft game from...
I doubt.
You're gonna climb towers, and they're gonna be really tough towers to climb.
Actually, now that you were mentioning, like, CEOs and that, Sony got new CEO as well.
Yeah, true. But that's what I mean. Like, there's now a generational change, and that might be why they're kind of like springing back to relevance, so to speak, because there's now you know, whatever, like, how do you say it, like, in the relay race, like when they give the fucking torch to the next generation. I don't fucking know.
Passing the torch.
Yeah, passing the torch. But you don't really pass the torch in a relay race. That's the Olympics.
You're passing what is it?
Yeah, exactly. What is it? Fucking dildo. Like you're passing the dildo.
Isn't the saying passing the torch?
Yeah, it is. But I'm thinking, like, what is that baton? Is it the baton or something that they use in relay? This is a complete tangent that has nothing to do with anything.
I got actually interested what the term is for it, but anyway, getting back on topic, since we're talking about Japanese games, I can't go past this episode without mentioning one series. Have you guys played any Castlevania games?
Like, I've played them, but I'm ashamed to admit that I haven't really. I'm not that big. Like, I mean, I know their cultural relevant stuff like that, but I'm not that big into them. Like, I played some on the emulator. I saw a friend play one on like PS3. I think around the time when to me it was like weird that Castlevania is like this, because it was like super cinematic and dramatic and stuff like that. And to me, Castlevania was always like in a way the proto Dark Souls. Which, by the way, is worth mentioning at this point, because talking about the other day, like, Castlevania is very Dark Souls in a way. The whole, like, how your attack animation, like, how it's designed to be janky in a way, and you have to know positioning and like.
That is true. Yeah, Tommy, what about you?
Not really. I've watched a lot of the gameplay from I guess probably from every game, and I've. As I like to research a lot of gaming history, I've listened to people talk about them a lot, but I've never really gotten to play them. Actually, probably for the reason that I've never owned a Nintendo console, except for the Wii that's at my parents' place collecting dust because no one wants to bowl anymore.
It's rough. Right. It's funny enough, roughly the same with me. Even though we also owned the GameCube, but GameCube was also kind of like. GameCube and Wii were very atypical, or not atypical, but like not that relevant from this point of view. Like legendary Japanese games, unless you're talking about very specific ones.
Yeah, I mean the Castlevania series. I think it hasn't really been that spectacular after it got out of the 16-bit era. I think all of the best, the golden standard Castlevania hits are on the NES and Super NES and their Japanese versions, and also I think on Sega Genesis is the Bloodlines game, which is also a very good Castlevania game in the classic style. But also I think it's one game series that we could play sometime in our
I was gonna suggest
section.
To do that too. Like I wouldn't mind doing.
Let's play Simon's Quest. It's a classic.
There's something like. I looked at the list of.
No, not that one.
I looked at the list of Castlevania games, and they're all like very serious in the name, like Order of Shadows or
yeah,
they're
Symphony
and then
the
there's
Night.
Akumaju Special Boku Dracula-kun, which seems to be some Dracula-kun. Yeah, but it looks to be some like silly.
Yeah.
It's like a mobile game.
Yeah, but since we just talked about this today at the office, we're in the coming future we're shifting our efforts more towards streaming stuff, and might be able to catch some Castlevania playthroughs there as well.
Yeah.
And I think they're still at their best when you're playing them yourself, but then again they also have that kind of Dark Souls-esque vibe to them, that you will die a lot unless you remember where the enemies come from, and unless you learn to control your character well. But then again, there's also very, very good music in them. So it's always, if you aren't familiar with that, it's worth it for the music alone.
Yeah, that could be a really cool thing to do. Yeah, so on that topic, I mean, not that anybody's gonna hear this because it's at the end of the podcast, but yeah, we were thinking that we'll try to do more like streaming type of content. For those of you who, I think there's reported at least one person who listens to this while they work, stuff like that. So we still want to provide content there. We still probably want to do podcasts, and then we might look into a format where we sort of like do a podcast on top of gameplay, where like maybe one person is playing and the rest of us are talking on top of it about the game or about other stuff, or we kind of want to experiment, because the problem with this format is of course that it's quite niche, so to speak, or quite restrictive in a way. Like, I mean, it's not that. It's more like this is relatively high effort comparatively. Like, maybe that's the fairer way to put it. Serum is kind of like, because you can play at the same time, or at least one person can be playing, and it's just and you can have immediate audience interaction, which would be really nice, especially like if we don't really have usually problems of like not having something to talk about. But personally, at least, I wouldn't mind like having somebody, for example, correct me on chat when I'm talking complete bullshit.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, you wouldn't mind having somebody correct me either.
God, someone should put you in shape, like all the shit you talk. But actually, you jumped into this topic of
meta stuff.
Future stuff, and I still wanted to point out one game that is not actually Japanese, but is probably going to be, well, due to its like setting, it's going to be very like looked at as a Japanese game.
Yeah, it's called Stardust Galaxy Warriors.
Exactly. Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh yeah, that's coming out.
Which is made by Sucker Punch, the guys.
That's right.
Who've made Infamous and what else?
Well, Infamous. Pretty much.
They're very infamous.
Yeah.
The Sly Cooper series, of course.
Oh yeah. They have quite interesting
these guys
portfolio.
These guys are making a game set in Japan, which is going to be very interesting.
Is there still any word on what kind of a game it's going to be?
Open world, third-person action game.
And it's supposed to be like very Dark Souls-y, but then again, I guess every single fucking game is supposed to be Dark Souls now. So
probably, I would think there's a emphasis on stealth, at least looking at the character.
Oh yeah, that was another
to be
thing,
like a ninja game, ninja person. So, but I guess we'll see more at E3.
Is ninja person the
sure.
culturally appropriate way to describe a ninja now? Because you don't know if they're male or female, so you just call them a ninja person.
Yeah. Ninja-ish person.
Isn't there a like a female word for ninja? So,
Ninja-et.
Ninja.
Ninjet.
Ninjas.
Ninjet. Yeah.
Ninjas.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Ninja.
But anyway, it will be pretty interesting. I mean, if the game is going to be what I imagine it to be like right now, so it's like basically Dark Souls with kind of samurai / ninja stuff, and with stealth emphasis, it's going to be.
Because that could really work. Because people are now slapping the moniker Dark Souls on fucking everything, and most of the things they slap it onto, basically. And like even to me, who I've admit this 10 billion times, but I haven't really played Dark Souls, so I just watch people play it and talk about it. Once again, some of the things I say might be complete bullshit. So, but yeah, like here it might actually work, like combining stealth with that formula. Because
it depends on how they create the levels.
Yeah, but like this idea, for example, you have to go on the roofs and stuff like that, and then if you get caught, you can fight. But like it's really ball-bustingly difficult, for example. I would really like that. Like, because usually the problem is that in stealth games is either you just flat out die if you get caught, or it's completely impossible. Not difficult, just impossible to win. You get infinite enemies, whatever. Or, it becomes trivial to beat the enemies and then just becomes a killing game. But if you could make it in a way where, you can fight, but it is like, it's actually legit difficult. It's possible, but difficult. And then make it in an interesting way. That could be really cool.
I don't think it's going to be Dark Souls in the way of like these like corridor linear levels. I think it's going to be full open world. Looking at the screenshots.
But I'm personally, I meant Dark Souls more in regards to how combat works.
Yeah.
And especially if you're ninja, I would assume it could be quite Bloodborne in the sense that maybe the enemies are slower and you are faster, but then like everything hits like a truck. Like that could be a really cool dynamic.
Yeah, indeed. That could actually work better than the basic Souls style
Yeah.
of combat.
Yeah. When this trailer came out for this game, I think Matthias, you noticed a very big flaw in it already.
Yeah, there was that. If anybody knows the correct answer to this or has some clue, let us know, because I was, as far as I've learned, you're not supposed to put your sword on your. Wait, how is it on the trailer? The guy is sitting on his knees and he's doing the. He has a sword sheath in front of him, and the sword is like flipped the wrong way. So, and I was like, I've been practicing Iaido, and that's not the way they teach us. And it's what we've been taught is that even if you are left-handed, you still do all the motions as if you were right-handed. The sword is always when it's on your belt, it's always on the left side. So when you take it out of your belt and you lay it down in front of you during the beginning and the end kind of ceremony where you kind of you both the sword and the teacher and everything, you take it out of your left side and you put it down there so that the handle is pointing to your right, and the blade is pointing away from you. And I think it was flipped like completely on the trailer.
And it's interesting because there have been many theories, like once again with games, and there's a lot of fan theories. There have been theories that the picture has been flipped, but again that doesn't solve it because it will be on the other side anyway.
Yeah.
Then there was a second one that this guy hasn't went through the proper training, so he doesn't know. And that's a part of the game and lore and story. And then there was a third one that no, actually there's four, but there was a third. The third one was that it's some way symbolizing that he's on the wrong side, or like he's doing something that goes against the code or something like this. And then there was the fourth that Sucker Punch just failed big time.
Yeah, but I think it would be also kind of cool if the reason was something like he's a ghost and he has to do it that way because of some lore reason.
I mean, you bet your balls they're gonna do something like that with it now, even if they did initially fail.
Yeah. And of course, it's possible that there are some schools out there that teach you to do it that way. Of course, this is just the way that we practice Iaido is just one way, but at least the way that they talk to us, it's that's the way it's supposedly done, like basically everywhere.
Way of the sword.
Exactly, way of the sword.
The samurai.
Yeah.
But
well,
anyway.
I think we're
Yeah, we should wrap up
running
because
out of
there's
time.
like a ton of shit we could still go into. We didn't even talk about like hentai games or stuff like that, or even though I alluded that we might haha. But yeah,
Fake foreshadowing.
yeah, fake foreshadowing, fake news. Yeah, but we might do another one or something out of these ones or about these topics. One thing we've also been thinking about is maybe we'll swap to doing one podcast every 2 weeks, and then make them like twice as long, so that this doesn't happen. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So thanks for listening and see you next time.
Bye.
Yeah.